The temperature in the room plummeted. Aussie stood frozen, staring at the large family portrait hanging above the fireplace, my throat constricted, making it impossible to swallow there. I was, or rather there I wasn't, the professional a frame photo showed. My parents and sister smiling in perfect harmony, the space where I should have been skillfully edited out, not pushed to thege, not blurred in the background, completely erased the pristine edgeware. My image had been removed were as clean as a surgical cut. Dinner's almost ready. Mom called from the kitchen, her voice floating through the house as if nothing was wrong, as if the visual confirmation of my lifelong suspicion was hanging on their wall like atrophy. My name is Olivia, I'm 32, and a former family afterthought. This is the story of how I reclaimed what was stolen from me, not just property, but my place in the world. He hung my coat and moved mechanically toward the kitchen, the scent of rosemary and lemon suddenly nauseating rather than comforting. My sister needed swirl of wine in her glass with practiced elegance, looking like she'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. In her expensive each turtleneck, she greeted me with that air kiss. She perfected clothes now to seem affectionate, far and not to avoid actual contact. You made it, she said, as if this was her house and I was late to an event. She was hosting. I smiled without reply, the kind-off smile you give when you've already screamed into your pillow too many times and decided your voice is better saved for worthier causes. Dinner proceeded like a carefully rehearsed play. Dad cards a roast with theatrical pressure, while Mom twice complimented an skincare routine. No one asked about my life, my new apartment, or that promotion I'd received last month. The only question directed at me was whether we still drove that little car, their code for we have no idea what's happening in your life, but want to seem like we could watch silently as my sister unwrapped a small gift from my parents' vintage gold watch. That, despite Mom's insistence, it was nothing fancy. I'd caught sight of the receipt. It would have cost me a week and a half of work, assuming I skipped groceries. My gift was a mug that said somebody's favorite TED Otter, which I'm sure was meant to be ironic. Or was it the cropped family photo kept flashing in my mind, an image I couldn't unsee? It wasn't a mistake or poor framing, it was intentional removal of visual representation of what they'd been doing my entire life. I excused myself after dessert, claiming fatigue. Mom offered me the guest room, not my old room, just the guest room with bygone sheets and a lamp that flickered if you brought too close to it. I shut the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying in my bag, thick ivory paper embossed seal. I planned to give it to them in the morning after the holiday rituals were complete, but seeing that photo changed everything. Standing in that living room watching my entire existence airbrushed out like a glitch in their perfect family portrait, it clarified everything. They hadn't just forgotten me, they had erased me carefully and strategically. I'd been a bad brand partnership. That night, I lay in the unfamiliar bed listening to the house settle around meth, same creaky floorboards, a ticking wall clock in the hall, my father's snoring, my mother's voice drifting up occasionally, my sister's practice, that breathy laugh, the golden child soundtrack. I closed my eyes and remembered the years of inequity, getting into my dream college and being asked how to first so they could help my sister with her portfolio, calling home when I couldn't make rent and being told things are tight right now, while they planned a cruise for her birthday, bringing home a boyfriend who never returned after they couldn't remember his name. At dinner, I was tired of telling myself I was just sensitive, tired of pretending I misunderstood that night lying in that bed. That was supposed to feel familiar, but didn't I? Stopped making excuse. Tomorrow I would give them the envelope. I wouldn't yell, wouldn't cry, wouldn't even raise my voice. I would just smile, say Merry Christmas, and watch that truth do what years of silence never could. Morning arrived, with the scent of coffee and cinnamon rolls, and the sound of Mrs. Sir discussing luggage weight limits or Onig, considering she wasn't the one paying for her travel, her luggage, or the suitcase, or the shoes inside that cost more than my monthly rent. I stayed in the guest room longer than necessary, not from tiredness, but reluctance to rejoin the performance downstairs. When I finally entered the kitchen, Mom was plating scrambled eggs with magazine a spread precision. Dad scrolled through his phone, and my sister sipped almond milk from a wine glass. Good morning, Mom said without looking up. Hope you slept okay in the guest room. The mattress has a personality, I replied, pouring coffee. She laughed as I'd made a joke I hadn't breakfasted with the usual performance. No, Ani asked about my job or apartment. Mrs. Sir dominated the conversation, with tales of her upcoming Barcelona trip, expressing how lucky she was to have parents who supported her dreams. As I exchanged gifts around the tree afterward, I quietly placed the envelope in the table beside coffee mugs and crumpled wrapping paper. No one noticed it immediately. They were too absorbed watching my sister marvel over her designer tote. But they always noticed eventually, just too late. It was me mother who spotted it about 10 minutes later, picking it up as if it might be a misdelivered wedding invitation. What's this? She asked it, addressing the room rather than me specifically. I took another sip of coffee before answering. That's from Dad. Glanced over. You didn't have to get us anything, he said with a smile that suggested he expected a novelty Muger scented candle. I know, I replied. I wanted to, That got their attention. Mom sat down, turning the envelope in her hands. Should we open it now? I shrugged. I'd rather you didn't. Dubiously, they opened it. Dad leaned over Mom's shoulder as she broke the seal. And for a few seconds there was just the sound of paper sliding free. The quiet crinkle of shifting pages. I watched Mrs. Der fold the handles of her new designer, toe it with precise care as if it were a newborn. She just named after a French city. Then the silence changed to the Kent. I didn't even have to look. Upi could feel it, something between realization and nausea, like the exact moment you realize the milk in your coffee is sour right after you've swallowed. Dad exhaled sharply through his nose. Mom's eyes scanned faster, no flipping to the second page. Then that third, as if she could outrun what she was reading. My sister looked over. What is it? They didn't answer. What's going on? She tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. I figured it was time. Meow now, I said, standing slowly. Merry Christmas. Is this Mom finally asked, her voice flat, not angry or confused, just blank. That I said, period, is a copy off Grandpa's will. She blinked. I've seen his will. We handled the estate. No, I corrected her. You handled what you told me was the estate. You never show it in the full. Will just said he left a few keepsakes and some cash that went toward funeral expenses. She stared, blinking turpidly. That version didn't mention the rental property in Old Briar. I continued, probably because you were already collecting rent from it by then. Dad dropped the papers on the table like a they burned him. Where did you get this? So you know, I said casually. Public records, title searches, tax filling, archived emails, a couple phone calls. Avery Pasha, lawyer. My sister finally listed up. Wait, what rental property? Won by the park. I turned to her. Theon you used for that photo shoot last year? Yeah. That one. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Mom found her voice again. Sweetheart, this isn't what it looks like. I smiled. That's funny because it looks like you used my name, my inheritance, and my legal rights to fund your lifestyle, while telling me there was nothing left for my. It wasn't like that, she said quickly. It was complicated. It wasn't, I replied. The will is extremely clear. The house was left to Messel beneficiary. Full title transfer. Edward means all that rent you've been collecting technically stolen. And their innovations unauthorized. Ed rubbed his temples, as if this conversation was giving him a migraine. I upped. It was I knew you wouldn't understand, he muttered. You're always so dramatic. That got a laugh out of me. Right, I'm dramatic. You edited me out of a family portrait and committed inheritance fraud, but sure, let's blame my tone. My sister looked genuinely confused, like someone had pulled the rug from under her and she hadn't hit the floor yet. But that house paid for my tuition now, I said, in the car, and the Mexico trip, and probably a few handbags along the way. That's not fair. She snapped. You didn't need it. You were always the independent one. You never asked for help because I was told there was nothing to ask for. I said. You made sure of that. Mom's voice shifted into soft, careful territory, the same tone she used when trying to return something at a boutique without a receipt. We didn't think you'd want the responsibility. You were busy. You were always so far away. I was far away, I said, period, because you made it very clear I wasn't welcome here. Dad pushed back his chair. You need to calm down. And you, I said, turning to him. Need a lawyer? Froze. I'm not suing, I added yet. Beauty have officially reclaimed ownership of the property. The tenants have been notified. Rent payments will now go to mayor. Access to the house is revoked. Mom looked like she might cry, but that house was her income. We depended on that. I tilted my head. Then maybe you shouldn't have stolen it. Where family, she whispered. No, I said, your people I used to barrelate it to. There's a difference. Mrs. R crossed her arms. You think this makes you better than us? No, I said, just not beneath you anymore. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was loaded, dense. The kind that makes your ears ring. No one moved, no one breathed. Dad stared at the envelope like it might explode. Mom's face had gone slack. My sister looked like she was waiting for someone to pinch her awake. I picked up my coat. Wait, Mom said, standing. Can't we at least talk about the side? Just did I said for years, every time you made a decision without me, every time you left me out, every time you told might understand someday. Dad's jaw tightened. If you leave now, don't bother coming back. I paused at Theodore, turned to look at them one last time. I think that's the first thing we've agreed on. And then I left. There outside was sharp cold, but clean. It hit my lungs like a reminder that I was still here, still standing still. Really slid behind the wheel of my car, let the engine hum to life, and drove. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all, and sometimes the loudest scream is waking away. 3 weeks passed before the first message came through. Mom, short and polite, polished like she'd rewritten it 5 times. Hi, sweetheart, we've been talking, and we think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we chat some meta this week? Hope you're well. Love, you. No punctuation at the end. Just love ya. Hanging awkwardly like a coat on Theron hook. The message came through Theon channel. I hadn't blocked yet, an old email account I kept just for work contacts and online receipts. She must have dug through her contacts to find Edie. Didn't respond to days later. Not their own. Please don't let this one thing ruin everything. Your sister is very upset. Is trying to stay calm, but you know how he gets when he feels blindsided. Yes, when he feels blindsided, not when he commits fraud. Not when he lies to his daughter for years. No feels blinced at poor guy, so I said nothing. Then came a voicemail from Dad. I didn't listen to it, just stared at the notification and deleted it. The last time he called Makido was when I offered to help him set up his retirement account, and he said, "Let's leave the money stuff to people who understand it, right?" Like him, then came the email from my sister. "You really think this makes you the winner? Fine, take the house, but don't come crying back when you realize money doesn't buy family," followed by another message a day later. "Mom and Dad are really stressed. They are talking about selling the condo. That's what you wanted. Congrats." That one I read twice, not because I felt bad, but because I wanted to make sure I understood just how much the loss of my property was unraveling their finance. Turns out the house had been the backbone of everything. Rent from 3 units covered their mortgage, their vacations, a chunk of my sister's education, and apparently even some cosmetic work my mom swore was just really good skincare. When I took it back, the whole machine sputtered, and I hadn't even started asking for back rent. Not yet. By spring, I started hearing whispers through mutual acquaintances. My lawyer, who handled my property case, happened to golf with someone from Dad's firm. A former college roommate's sister worked at the boutique where Mama plead. A neighbor mentioned my parents were trying to refinance their condo. Another say Dad had taken up consulting, which knew meant cold calling old clients and hoping one still owed him a favor. Mom picked up weekend shifts at a boutique downtown, the kind of place where she used to shop. Now she rang up yoga pants for influencers and probably told herself it was temporary. My sister moved back home. The apartment in the city was too expensive. Her clients dried up, hair are collected, disbanded, or imploded. Hard to tell which, and frankly I didn't care. The GoFund she launched for a new creative chapter raised a grand total of $83. Two of those dollars were from my ex-boyfriend. I don't know why that tale made me laugh, but it did. Meanwhile, I fixed up the house. My house seat was dusty at first, a little unloved but solid. I hired a contractor to touch up the paint, replace the old windows. I cleared out the furniture my parents had stored there, and donated most of it. Captone chair, a navy blue armchair that I vaguely remembered from my childhood. The only piece that didn't feel like a cam with strings attached. The tenants were a can. One left me a thank you note after he lowered their rent by $50. Said I was first landlord who treated them like a human being. That meant more to me than any of my parents' recycled apologies ever could. It's funny the things you start to notice when the noise dies down. Silence once heavy and personal becomes peaceful, like space you find a legit to stretch into. I stopped checking me phone every hour. I stopped bracing for the next guilt trip. I started sleeping through the night. And then on the afternoon, about 8 months after that Christmas confrontation, I found a letter in my mailbox. Not an email, not a text, a real letter, my mom's handwriting. On the front, she'd sent it to my new address at the inherited house, the same house they'd hidden from me for years. My lawyer had given them the address during the property transfer, and I hadn't thought to tell him not to. I held the envelope for a minute before opening, not because I thought it might be censored, but because I wanted to mark the moment. The envelope smelled like her perfume inside. 2 pages neatly written, full off. Didn't know. And it wasn't intentional, and we only wanted what was best for everyone. My favorite part was, "You've always been so strong." We didn't realize they needed anything from us. That's what people say when they benefit from your silence and need an excuse for never skiing. Why you stop talking. Shut close with "We hope someday you'll come home. Maybe we can start over. Maybe we can be a family again." No mention of restitution, no mention of the stolen income or the lies, or the fact that I'd been cropped out of the literal family photo. I put the letter in a drawer, didn't throw it out, didn't answer either. That was the last time she reached out directly. 3 years later, I bumped into my old neighbor at a bookstore. She asked if I was still managing that property, and Ismail said yes. She hesitated before saying, "I hear your parents had a raw time of it." I said nothing. She nodded. "Well, you look happy, that's good." And I am. I still live in the house now, not because I need to, not out of spite, but because it's peaceful. It's mine. I wake up to birds and sunlight instead of footsteps outside my bedroom door and passive-aggressive remarks about how I never call anymore. I rebuilt that backyard garden, repainted the front steps, so windowsills are full of plants that thrive on sunlight and low expectations. There's a photo on my mantle now, me standing in front of the house holding the keys. No one else in shot, just me. It's my favorite photo because no one had to crop anyone out. I still hear from them occasionally. A forwarded email, a message through a cousin once, a Christmas card that just said, "Thinking of you, hope you're well." No return address. I didn't reply, and the funny thing is I'm not angry anymore. I'm not waiting for closure or justice or even an apology. I already have what they never gave me: my name on something permanent, my place in the world, my own story. I used to believe that if I just tried hard enough, just earned it, maybe one day they'd love me the way they loved her, but love the kind that matters in something. You have to earn it, something you give freely, and what they gave me was conditional. What I gave myself was everything else. So no, I don't miss them. I don't replay their conversations. I don't imagine dramatic reunions. I don't dream about some perfect apology that sets everything right. I already said it right. The life a hobby now didn't come with A bow or a blessing, it came from doing the hard thing, from walking away, and that, as it turns out, was the only gift I ever needed.